his patrol car onto the old forest access road. It should have been a routine patrol, just another sweep, but a call about a suspicious black SUV lurking near the edge of town had grabbed his attention. The vehicle had no plates, and it had been seen close to a closed gas station. His two K9 partners, Shadow and Bear, were riding quietly in the back. Daniels followed fresh tire tracks deep into the dense, dark woods, the snow already trying to swallow the marks whole. The deeper he drove, the more completely isolated it became. Trees stood along the road like silent, judging sentinels. His radio crackled and then just went dead. No signal out here. He reached for it again when he saw the black SUV parked just ahead, abandoned, but the engine was still ticking, still warm. Something wasn't right. He stepped out of his cruiser, slowly, one hand resting near his holstered weapon. Shadow gave a low, rumbling growl from the back seat. Daniels took a few cautious steps forward, scanning the silent area. That's when it happened. Two masked men lunged from behind the trees, knocking him down hard and fast. One of them immediately struck him with a crowbar. The world went dizzy and white. He tried to call out, but they were fast, they were organized. They ripped the radio right off his chest, bound his wrists with thick, harsh rope, and dragged him toward a massive pine tree nearby. They tied him tight, leaving him upright, completely exposed to the snow and the wind, helpless. Then, without a single word, they simply vanished back into the storm. Back at the patrol car, Shadow and Bear waited, anxious, unsettled. At first, it was just the sound of the wind and the swirling snow. But then something shifted, something vital. A sharp, piercing bark from Shadow broke the silence as he paced frantically in the back seat. His instincts were screaming that their human was in danger. Bear instantly joined in, ears perked, nose pressed to the glass, whining. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Still no sign of Daniels. That's when Shadow did something truly remarkable. He lunged forward, clawing and pushing with his paws against the cage divider. Bear, picking up on the pure urgency, threw his entire weight against the rear door with a force that actually bent the handle. The door creaked, then finally popped open. The two dogs bolted out, noses low to the ground, immediately following the fading scent of their handler. They ran with a furious purpose, paws crunching through the fresh snow, weaving through the trees, completely ignoring the cold biting at their fur. They didn't need commands. Daniels was in danger, and they were going to find him. Shadow led the charge, his black coat barely visible against the falling snow. Bear followed right behind, eyes alert. Every few feet, Shadow stopped, sniffed the air, then surged forward again. It was as if he could feel Daniels's fear, hear his heartbeat miles away. These weren't just police dogs, after all. They were family. After nearly a mile, Bear let out a sharp, decisive bark, turning toward a faint, new scent. Shadow's ears shot up. Both dogs instantly picked up the pace, zeroing in on a target that was getting closer, fast, through the thick curtain of snow. A faint sound emerged, muffled grunts and the rustle of rope against bark. Shadow came to a dead stop, his head snapping toward a large pine tree just up ahead. Bear followed, his tail straight, nose twitching wildly. They had found something. And then, through the falling snow, they saw him. Officer Daniels was tied tightly to the trunk of the tree. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with blood. His eyes fluttered open, barely registering the blurry shapes bounding toward him. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating. But then he felt warm, urgent breath against his hands, and the familiar, strong nudge of Shadow's nose against his cheek. Daniels choked out a laugh of disbelief. "Shadow, Bear, you're here." Shadow let out a low, mournful whine as he examined the thick rope around his handler's chest. Bear moved to the other side, sniffing and pawing anxiously at the knots. They worked together, teeth and paws tugging at the bindings. It wasn't easy. Daniels had been tied up tight, but the dogs didn't give up. Not for a single second. All the while, Daniels whispered to them in a raw voice, "Good boys. I knew you'd come." Minutes crawled by, the snow piling up around them, but then, with a loud snap, the rope finally gave way. Daniels slumped forward, gasping for air. Shadow supported him instantly with his body, while Bear barked loudly into the wind, sending out a call, a desperate, necessary cry for help into the silent, vast woods. They had found him, but they weren't safe yet. Officer Daniels leaned heavily against Shadow as the dogs helped him stand. His legs were weak from hours of immobility, and the intense cold had stiffened his joints. But the dogs, one on either side, were absolutely relentless in their support. Bear nudged under Daniels's arm, urging him to move forward. Shadow walked ahead, guiding them through the snow-covered terrain. Each step was agony. Daniels's heavy boots dragged in the deep snow. His breath came in wheezes, but the thought of giving up never crossed his mind, not with his loyal partners literally fighting for him. The snowfall began to thin, but the cold was still biting. Wind whipped harshly across the trees, and the sound of cracking branches echoed like distant warnings. Suddenly, Shadow stopped dead. He sniffed the air, then barked sharply and turned. Bear followed, tail wagging slightly now, sensing something hopeful. Just ahead, faint voices broke through the hush of the forest. Daniels could barely comprehend the words, but his heart lifted. Shadow immediately took off ahead, barking with full force. Bear stayed right with Daniels, nudging and pulling him along. Moments later, a search party appeared. Officers bundled in winter gear, their eyes widening at the unbelievable sight. "Daniels, we've got him!" one of them shouted into the radio. Relief swept over the team as they rushed forward. The medics quickly wrapped Daniels in blankets, checking his vitals. But as they lifted him onto the stretcher, his hands clung tightly to the collars of Shadow and Bear. He whispered, "They saved my life. Don't you ever forget that." The hospital lights felt harsh and blinding compared to the silent, dark forest. But Officer Daniels didn't care. He was alive, and that was nothing short of a miracle. The doctors confirmed that if he'd been found even an hour later, hypothermia and severe blood loss would have claimed him. But thanks to Shadow and Bear, he had made it home. Word of the rescue spread like wildfire. Quickly, news crews arrived, eager to cover the unbelievable story of two K9 dogs who had tracked their handler through a blizzard, physically freed him, and led rescuers back just in time. The footage of Daniels hugging his dogs from the hospital bed brought tears to millions around the world. Back at the precinct, a special ceremony was held. Shadow and Bear, now wearing polished canine vests, sat proudly as the mayor placed medals around their necks. Daniels, leaning on a cane in one hand and with a tear in his eye, addressed the crowd. "Those two didn't just do their duty," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They proved what loyalty really means. They're not just partners, they're heroes." After the applause finally faded, Daniels returned home. That night, as the fire crackled warmly and the snow continued to fall gently outside, Shadow curled at his feet and Bear rested his head on his lap. Daniels ran his fingers through their fur, overwhelmed by gratitude. "They never gave up on me," he whispered. The bond between a K9 officer and his dogs had never been clearer. And in the silence of that snowy night, three hearts beat as one, forever changed.